My name is John Burns. I'm one of the owners and founders of the Burns Brothers, and we have a number of different organizations underneath our kind of ecosystem, but one is this membership club called H2GC House, and it's really built on bringing people together to network, to collaborate, but to make an impact. And I think this conversation, this series of conversations brought to you by the American Heart Association is really around impact, around dialogue, around bringing people together to solutions. So without further ado, I want to jump directly into our first conversation today and then bring Gerald up here to help facilitate the conversation. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you. Hey, good morning, everyone. I know that you probably begin somewhere else. It is Friday. And I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about the work that we do, and then I'm going to turn over to Dr. Buckley. But I wanted to take a few moments just to remind you about why we're here. This week, obviously, there's a lot of great conversations going on, talking about really important issues that impact people of color. You know, advocacy, you talk about finance, you talk about economics. There's a lot of really good conversations around what we can do to improve the communities where we all live and where we all care. I get the pleasure of serving as the Executive Vice President for Health Equity around the world for the American Heart Association and as Chief Diversity Officer. And what I can tell you is that when you talk about health equity around the world, it looks different. And then there are some things that are the same. One of the things that are the same is that housing is a global issue. Access to care is a global issue. Having careers where you can sustain families and buy houses and actually do things that people want to do is a global issue. I'll tell you, politics, no surprise to anybody, is a global issue. But what I also want you to know is that the work of the American Heart Association, unfortunately, is evergreen. You know, cardiovascular disease and stroke, number 1, 2 killers in the world, it continues to be that way. So in as much as we're getting smarter and technology is getting better, those issues aren't going anywhere. And so that's why we do the work that we do. One of the great things that came out of being here this week is that we had a chance to share an amazing partnership that the American Heart Association has through Bank of America. So if there's anyone here from Bank of America, we appreciate you. And Bank of America has put together a 4-year plan to do a collaborative on health equity. And what does that mean? If you think about cardiovascular disease, you think about stroke, you think about cancer, you think about diabetes, those are the 4 things that have taken out as many people as you can imagine. They are providing funding, they are providing research, they are providing analytics, such that our 3 companies can work together on research, on public policy, and on education with communities to figure out how to get upstream screenings. So once you learn that you have cancer, different circumstances, what can you do upstream to prevent it? Diabetes, what can we do to get further upstream so that we can prevent it, so that many people don't have to go through what they're going through now? That's what that partnership is about. Delighted to talk about that yesterday at the Caucus. Had a really full room talking about it. Want you to know that the AHA, the American Cancer Society, American Diabetes Association, we partner on some of these things because these things are bigger than just one company. But you all didn't come here to hear me talk about that or me. We came here to talk about something really important. And that is the fact that 350,000 people every year will have a cardiac arrest event outside of a hospital. Now I'm just going to stop there just for a second. And in that number, you may not know this, but only 1 in 10 actually survive. So let that sink in just a minute, because in as much as I'm talking about numbers, I'm actually talking about people we all love. Because there's somebody's grandmother or uncle, someone's brother or sister, and actually of that 350,000 people, 23,000 of them are kids under 18 years old. So I hope you hear me in saying that cardiac arrest is a thing. We all were fortunate enough to hear Damar Hamlin's story. The beauty of that was that was almost like a perfect storm, meaning he had that event in the most opportune time because everybody that could do something about it was there. But for all of the rest of us, nah, it don't happen that way. And I know you're going to hear a lot more about that from our esteemed panel, but I want you to know that the American Heart Association is committed to creating a nation of lifesavers. And you'll hear more about that. But the fact that 7 out of 10 people that see a cardiac event are hesitant to do something because they're not sure what to do. So maybe by show of hands, how many people in here are trained in CPR? I love it. Now, here's the downside. If you're in a restaurant somewhere with a lot of people that look like you, chances are that's not the case. And then the other thing is, if 7 out of 10 of these events are happening at home, you're gonna have to treat someone that you love. So your grandma, your uncle, your kid, something will happen where you have to be aware of how to do CPR. And this program that you're gonna hear about is all focused on doubling the number of people who are trained to save a life. And the truth of the matter is, it's not that people don't want to, they just don't know what to do. And they're scared to touch. And so you're going to hear a little bit today about what the American Heart Association is aiming to do. You're going to hear today from some amazing people talking about the work and why it's important. And this morning, I had the pleasure of meeting an amazing lady that has a living story of why this work is incredibly important. So thank you all for having me. Thank you all for being here on a Friday morning. And Dr. Buckley, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Testing. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Bryan Buckley, he, him pronouns. I get the wonderful pleasure of being the moderator for this amazing panel. I'm the head of public health for CareFirst, BlueCross, BlueShield, which is the largest health plan in this Mid-Atlantic area, serving 3.9 million of our members here. And also, my greatest honor is being on the board of the American Heart Association Greater Washington area, where we are also doing that hard work to really thinking about how we can make sure that more people in this area are trained in CPR and also have access to AEDs. And so our panel here is titled Champions, Heroes, and Survivors. And so this is really about making those stories that were mentioned earlier, those numbers that we hear about, what does that look like on the front line? And how do we change those stories into making them action? So I have two amazing panelists here, and I'll introduce them high level, and then we're going to give them an opportunity to share their story and how they came to this work and what they are doing to really make sure that they are advancing this work. So the first is Patrice Bullock. She's an American Heart Association advocate and founder of the Bailey's Heart and Soul Foundation. I want to give a short bio because I don't want to steal their thunder. And then we also have, to my far left here, Kimble, founder of 44 for Life Foundation and a retired National Basketball Association player, and he can tell you how he came to this work as well. So without further ado, I'll let Patrice start off with sharing her story and her why.
Testing. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Patrice Bullock, and I will just give you a little background. I am a family nurse practitioner. I am a nursing home administrator, but most of all, I am a mother. I have 4 kids, and they're all B's: Bailey, Brandon, Brianna, and Benjamin, and my partner, Dr. Donovan Parks. On May 12, 2021, my 16-year-old son, Bailey, succumbed to sudden cardiac arrest. Bailey was one of the 9 out of 10 individuals who did not survive his sudden cardiac event on that day. CPR was significantly delayed, approximately 8 minutes and 45 seconds. The thought process was for the team that was present at the time to get the AED, and that the AED will tell them what to do. Bailey had just finished a track and field event at his school, and this was a private school. So it was definitely shocking and alarming that a cardiac emergency action plan was not in place. As a healthcare provider on that particular day, when I did receive the call, and just knowing Bailey, he's around 6'5", 180, tall, skinny, slender. He was running track. So at the time that I received the call, I was like, he probably broke something. No big deal, they're taking him to the hospital. However, as I thought about it, and as a mom, and as I'm driving to the hospital, I was like, no, this is something different. You definitely have that instinct as a mom. You can tell that something is different. As I'm getting closer to the hospital, I could definitely tell It's not what I'm expecting it to be. However, upon arriving at the hospital and, being in the healthcare setting and you're being ushered into a conference room, you know that the news is not what you're looking for. So on that dreadful day, Bailey succumbed to sudden cardiac arrest. He did not make it. At that moment, and probably I'm going to say within days later, it's what could I have done differently? Not only that, by Bailey being only 16 at the time, he had so much that he wanted to accomplish. Bailey was a track athlete, and on that day, his last 100 meter, he was a winner. So I'm super excited that he went out as a winner. Bailey was also a wide receiver as a football player, and Bailey also played basketball. And as far as academic is concerned, Bailey was an A student. So he was just so well-rounded. But again, he was only 16, so much that he wanted to accomplish. And as the statistics that was just mentioned, over 350,000 cases of sudden cardiac arrest occur, and the survival rate is slim. CPR, known CPR, can actually double and in some cases triple the outcome of sudden cardiac arrest. So I went right into action and we started the Bailey's Heart and Soul Foundation. And our mission since then, basically bringing awareness to sudden cardiac arrest, CPR and AED awareness, and the importance of quality CPR, and that time does make a difference. I was introduced to the American Heart Association by another physician that I've worked with in the past. He's also a member of the American Heart Association, Dr. Morgan. And that introduction basically spawned me into being an advocate. I thought I knew what I was doing when I initially started out, but after partnering with the American Heart Association and just collaborating, I've been able to go into schools in Maryland, public and private schools, basically teaching individuals, teaching the students the importance of CPR, how to perform quality hands-only CPR, and that you don't necessarily need to be certified, just knowing the demonstration is as effective. We have worked over the last 3 years with the American Heart Association and was able to pass the Bailey-Bullock Act that went into effect July of 2024 in all the Maryland public and high school, meaning that all schools will be required to have a cardiac emergency response program in place. I've also worked with the American Heart Association in furthering its effort on ensuring that funds, the access to AED and the HEARTS Act. It's good to pass a bill, right? But these schools, they definitely need the resources to have emergency action plans in place to purchase AEDs and train individuals on, to being CPR certified. So the work and just the legacy for the Bailey's Heart and Soul Foundation, working with the American Heart Association, and we couldn't have accomplished and cemented Bailey's goal and Bailey's mission and Bailey's legacy, especially after losing such a young soul at the age of 16. So for that, I'm just forever grateful, just being able to partner and just working with the American Heart Association. And in the process of doing all that, I met Bo, who also has been significantly, extremely supportive just to the mission of sudden cardiac arrest. It should be CPR. Everyone needs to know how to perform CPR. It's a life-saving measure, a life-saving technique that you can save life. You never know which life that you're going to save. It can be that of your family member, your mom, your brother, your sister. But since starting the foundation, I'll just share this brief story. Recently, a mom called and she said, since starting the Bailey's Heart and Soul Foundation and just bringing the education and just the awareness, in addition to the CPR and the AED, we're also in the process of doing heart screening. So she actually took her son to get a screen, and that screen was positive. But again, it's because of the mission. It's because of just everyone now bringing the awareness to sudden cardiac arrest. You know, someone mentioned earlier that with Damar Hamlin, I usually say that the athletic medical medical personnel and the coaches, they're literally on the field, just like waiting for something to happen, right? In our local setting, that's not the case. So we are all ambassadors for CPR. We're all ambassadors for AED. And even if we're like at a game, whatever it may be, parents, moms, brothers, sisters, cousin, neighbor, it is our responsibility to ensure that we're all saving lives.
Thank you for sharing your story. And so, Bo, I'm going to give you the stage to talk about your story and the work that you are doing.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I want to thank American Heart Association and everyone that put the event together for having me today. As mentioned, I'm a retired NBA basketball player. I played with the late Hank Gathers at Loyola Marymount. And 1990, March 4th, Hank Gathers died of sudden cardiac arrest, which I didn't understand CPR at the time. I didn't know how important it was, but 20 years ago, another gentleman by the name of Robert Carter had sudden cardiac arrest during a YMC game that I was in. And at that time, I didn't know CPR, and he didn't make it. He was 33 years old. Ironically, his physique, his everything, it reminded me of Hank. I mean, just his muscle tone, just everything. So I was very upset about that situation, so I became a CPR instructor, and that called me into action for the last 20 years during the foundation 44 for Life. Hank Gather's number was 44. As an instructor, what I found out when I listened to the stories and as given the sessions, one of the things that jumped out at me was awareness. So, for example, when Hank went down, there was 2 doctors present, the entire coaching staff, who knew that there was a defibrillator. I didn't know we had one there that day. But without placing blame, everyone did everything but go get the defibrillator and save Hank's life. And these were people that loved Hank. So again, not placing blame. Now, fast forward to Damar Hamlin's situation. Well, the reason why they learned from the Hank Gather situation what not to do, and that allowed Damar Hamlin's life to be saved because everyone sprung into action immediately. Started CPR right away. They brought the AED, and his life was able to be saved. So I think awareness is super important. And as Patrice said, time and time again, that story with Bailey also happens where there was a guy, Wes Leonard in Michigan, and he was a superstar point guard, superstar quarterback, but in this basketball game, he scores the winning basket. His mom's in the stand as a nurse. He goes down. Everyone does everything but go get the defibrillator. And also it was in the nursing office where the room was locked. So time and time again, it's very important to have an action plan. So I've been blessed to be on the board of Children's Hospital with Dr. Victoria Vetter in Philadelphia. And she has an action plan, which is very similar to a fire drill plan, where, you want to know, we do certain, she has a program that will allow you to be prepared just as you would with a fire extinguisher. So it's very important to kind of know CPR. And know about how to use a defibrillator, et cetera. Fast forward to now, I've been blessed to, as I mentioned, our mission is to put defibrillators everywhere. We want to put them in every restaurant. We want to put them in, we want to actually duplicate what New York City has done. New York City, if you guys are not familiar, every city, state, county, and federal vehicle has a defibrillator in it. Now, New York is, they have the budget for it, et cetera. My goal is to not only do it in Philadelphia, where for the local cops there, but make that plan nationwide. Why? Because cops are out in the field. So if you're giving a ticket to a person and a sudden cardiac arrest happens, forget that ticket, you'll be able to go save a life, and it will help in the urban community to help build trust with our young folks who don't trust, law officers, where now you can help change that narrative and have a cop come and say, hey, he saved my mom, saved my neighbor, saved my friend. So that's something that I'm looking forward to implementing as well. About 8 months ago, there was a truck driver that drove over the 476 highway. And, I just stopped. I came maybe 2 minutes after the incident. And, I just thought that, hey, let me just see if I can just help with anything. It was about a 10-car pileup. The truck driver literally drove over. He was on the side. The truck was on the side. It was a major accident. So, making a long story short, I ended up being one of the 4 people helping to pull this guy out of his vehicle. There was 2 EMS workers there, but they didn't have the equipment to save his life. So one of the guys, one of the EMS workers started doing CPR for maybe 2 minutes. Well, guess who had to chime in and do CPR for the last 12 minutes until the equipment came? I did. And we ended up saving his life. So thank you. So, we want to put all of us in that kind of situation that, we can turn something that's tragic into something that's positive. And, I didn't know I was going to be saving that guy's life today. But, when you're a CPR instructor for 14 years, you kind of dread that moment that you might be called into action. But the one thing you don't want to be is helpless, like I was feeling helpless as I was when Hank went down, when Robert Carter went down. So we want to turn something that's, that's tragic, something that's very positive. And one of our initiatives also with 44 for Life is to establish a global PSA. Now, I go around the country and I ask people, I say, are you aware that defibrillators are fully automated? You will be stunned how many people are not aware that it's fully automated. So I look forward to collaborating with American Heart Association. I'm going to collaborate with all the professional teams. We're going to make sure that the public knows that, you can save a life. You do not need to be trained to use an AED. Most of them are fully automated. So that's going to help save lives and, make the world a better place. And as I think about it, there's no way, of all the great things we can do in the world, there's nothing better than saving a life. And so, this is great work that we're all doing. It's super important. We have a lot of work to do. We're nowhere near, scratching the surface. And one of the other things I'm going to do, other than, put them in restaurants, etc., for all the golfers out there, we plan to put them in every hole at every golf course. Now, one of my, and one of the pilot programs at Penn Oaks in Westchester, where I'm a member, what we're going to do is we're going to have the technology that when somebody goes down and that cart is next to the individual, is going to alert EMS and is going to alert the pro shop and every employee with a smartphone or a smart tablet. So by putting it at every hole, I will either go back to where I teed off at or go to the next hole. Now, most people that play golf know it's very difficult to find a hole on it, to find the next hole on a normal day. So obviously when an event happens, it's a stressful situation. But now, by alerting all the employees, by the EMS being on their way, by the time I get back from where I teed off at, one of the maintenance guys will be there, one of the pro shops will be there. And as you know, every minute that we don't get oxygen to the brain, our chance of survival goes down 10% per minute. So it's going to save lives. So this is my life's work, and I'm very proud to be here. 44 for Life.
So thank you, Patrice and Bo, for sharing your stories. And we've heard a couple of different things. We've heard how this can be very personal, someone very close to you. But we also know this can also happen with your colleagues and teammates. And although you're probably thinking, okay, Bryan's just here moderating, I'm just not another pretty face out here. I also have a story as well. And I had mentioned earlier to you, one of the great honors I have is being on the American Heart Association's board. And so this true story first started off, got about 3 years ago, July, got on the board, and I had this whole entire idea of how I was going to do all this equity stuff, because that was my thing at the moment. Equity stuff, I had a whole plan of what I was going to do. Fast forward a month, August 21st, 3 years ago, Me and my buddy are on a bike ride in southern Maryland, in Mechanicsville, for those that know where that is, near Leonardtown. 3-notch trails for the folks that are my cyclist enthusiasts. And we're just riding our bikes. It's me and my buddy. We're catching up. And about 45 minutes into that bike ride, we see a man in front of us collapse, just suddenly. We immediately sped up, went over to him, checked, the pulse, all the vitals, and saw that he was not responsive. Immediately told my friend, call 911. As we were starting, I'm checking his pulse and kind of keeping an eye on that. I notice his pulse just disappears, and you see his eyes glaze over. Immediately, I knew that CPR needed to be started. And so as other people, bystanders, started watching and seeing what's going on, I immediately started CPR, tried to get other people, because it was one of those hot days in Maryland that people know, like a true Maryland swamp hot. And so when you're doing CPR, that is a tiring thing. So getting other people involved. While doing CPR, I was training 2 other people to follow what I was doing so I could take a break and so they could do. We ended up doing CPR for 20 minutes. And that 20 minutes, I'm gonna tell you, in the moment felt like it was forever. Right after that 20 minutes happened, finally the EMS arrived. They used the AED. But at the time, you heard the AED go on 3 different times, and we weren't even sure if anything happened. And now there's instead of just us 2, there's now a crowd of 30 people around us, stopping on the road. We immediately saw them take the man away, and I can be honest with you, at that moment, I thought that guy's life was over. Because 20 minutes, that's a long time. We go on our day, and me and my buddy are just man, I think we just watched someone die. A couple of days later, we got a call from Mechanicsville Fire Rescue. And they called me, best call ever. They were like, hey, you know that situation, you were on a bike ride, right? And I was like, yeah, we've been searching for you for a couple of days. You ended up saving that man's life. Not just saving this man's life. His name is Chris Holton, but no issues whatsoever, no cognitive decline, no nothing. This man was a full bill of health, which is, they actually said the times that they've worked there, there's only been 2 instances where they've ever seen a miracle like that where you see a full recovery. And so we know that 2 hands can save a life. And that's the message if you have not gotten anything from anything that the panelists have talked about. 2 hands can save a life. And those 2 hands allowed Chris to have many, many more years with his kids. He's an avid coach in the community. He inspires many kids. Him and I now, we become part of the family. He's we text every week. He's a big sports guy. And I'm a big Michigan State person. Go green, go white for all my folks. Yep, there we go. And so anytime we are winning or losing, he is there with me along, say, hey, you guys had a rough game. Or, hey, you guys had a good game. And so we just know that this impact is not just a single story, and this can truly happen to anybody, whether it's close to you, a teammate, or just randomly in public. CPR is important, and as we know, doing immediate CPR can either double and sometimes triple the opportunity for that person to have a full recovery. Getting just people all wrapped up here and understanding the need for this, and just a show of hands real quick. How many people are trained in CPR? Just raise your hands. How many people, their whole entire family is trained in CPR? So see, there's some areas of opportunity. Do you know if your colleagues are trained in CPR? How many? Does your job have an cardiac action plan? See, less hands. Does your employment have an AED available? Good, okay, I had an end on good at that. And so there's many things that we can start doing now to keep this work going forward, and as Bo said, really take these tragedies and make it into something actual that can save future lives. So the question I have for the group here is, after all of these things, what inspired you after everything to kind of make action happen? Because often, for many people, they don't necessarily take that story and make it into action. So what inspired you to take everything to the next step?
Well, for me, it was that helpless feeling that I mentioned. and then I'm a God-fearing person. So the first time Hank had professionals around, the second time we were just at a YMC game where there wasn't a lot of professionals around at all, and just knowing that one time is more than enough. Well, 2 times is a sign, and I just wasn't going to be helpless anymore. And it just sparked me into action, and it's something I'm dedicated to forever. But as I mentioned to you before, awareness. So when you start mentioning, people around you that's not, CPR trained, well, that can impact my life. I could be with them, and so you're now sparking me to try to bug people in my family and friends close to me to say, you know what, let me teach you CPR. I'll do it for free, but if you're gonna be around me, I need you to know CPR. So that sparked me that Robert Carter event.
Thank you. Patrice.
Yeah, so in Bailey's case, the front door was locked. The AED was locked in the nurse's office. The coach panicked. Bystanders did not know what to do. When I did have a follow-up, just trying to figure out the root cause analysis, and my immediate question was, when was the last time the team had an emergency action plan in place? I was not able to get that answer. There was only one AED, so I know at that point that I needed to do something to make AEDs much more accessible. The first AED that we donated was to a public school in Baltimore. So again, it's meeting kids, children, where they are, and how can we make a difference. When I do see those young minority kids and just children in general, I am seeing Bailey, and sometimes I am looking for a Bailey. I will look at someone. I remember we were like at an airport, and it was, I believe, the beginning of the school season. And there was this one young guy, looked just like Bailey. So again, I'm looking for how can I make a difference? How can I make a change? As a mom, it's a painful situation to be in. It's a journey, a painful journey that you walk every day. It's not something that I would like for someone else to be in my shoe. And again, just to make a difference in someone's life. And what was missing, and how can you turn that missing piece into something positive?
And I'll just add, she just brought up something I normally talk about. At the airport, for example, you'll have somebody working a kiosk. The AED is literally right behind them. Or you may have passengers, who's waiting for their flight. I can promise you that the kiosk person is not going to get it because they're assuming that's for the police or medical people that's going to arrive. They wouldn't be called into action. And the person that's waiting at the gate for there would probably be thinking the same. They need to be trained. So that's where the awareness really becomes, as in my work, I'm saying that awareness is a huge factor in getting the word out, which is why we're going to do that PSA.
I know for myself, I think you guys have all alluded to some piece of how you've taken that and made it to action. I think often around the aspect of policy, process, and practice. The practice of how we are doing this and making sure we're constantly educating people around them and they know the practice of what to do. But I think even for you, Patrice, taking it into the policy side and actually making sure that this is something across the state of Maryland that could be available into schools, even the work that you were doing and making sure there's a process that people know around how to get those AEDs. And I know with the work that I've done with the American Heart Association, just specifically in the DC area, and how many people are from DC here? Okay, a couple here. And so one of the things that we did, for those, if you call 911 in the district, we actually helped pass legislation to get funding for the 911 respondent to actually walk you through the process of how to do hands-on CPR. So in that moment that you're figuring out, hey, I don't know what to do, that's an opportunity. If you call 911, they can walk you through the process. And we wanted to make sure that through that process, everyone had the opportunity to make sure that they could save someone's life as well. So in closing, as we end out here, I just wanted to mention a couple of things. One, if you are not, as was mentioned earlier, if you are not part of the Nation of Lifesavers, to really commit, which is committed to making CPR and AED awareness education permanent fixture in our communities, make sure you look that up. In addition to our folks in federal side of the house, this is the opportunity for you to reach out to your legislator, your congressperson, your senator around the Access to AED Act to really create a grant program for K through 12 schools for CPR and AED training, and to provide AEDs and cardiac emergency classes in those areas. And then something that you can do that's the easiest thing ever is if you go to heart.org/hands-only CPR, take 90 seconds to refresh yourself on hands-only CPR. But even more importantly, make sure you share it with 1, 5, 10 other people within your community, within your sphere of influence, so that they are aware, because we never know when a cardiac arrest could happen, and 2 hands can save a life. So with that, round of applause for our wonderful panelists.